The call came at 7:43 on a Wednesday morning. I was on my back porch in Cookeville, Tennessee, drinking my second cup of coffee and watching a pair of cardinals fight over the feeder I had hung from the dogwood tree. I had nowhere to be. I rarely did anymore. Retirement had given me mornings like this one, slow and quiet, and I had learned to be grateful for them even when they felt empty. My phone buzzed against the patio table. Unknown number. Nashville area code. I almost let it go to voicemail. I had been getting a lot of spam calls lately, people pretending to be the IRS, people pretending to be my bank. But something made me pick it up. Mr. Calloway? This is Nurse Patricia Hale at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. I'm calling regarding your son, Marcus. I set down my coffee. My son. 2 words I had not heard anyone direct at me in 11 years. He's been admitted, she said. He's stable, but we need to speak with you as soon as possible. He listed you as an emergency contact. He still had me listed. After everything, I'll be there in 2 hours, I said. My name is Raymond Calloway. Most people call me Ray. I am 63 years old. I spent 31 years as a licensed electrician, mostly commercial work, hospitals and schools and office buildings across Middle Tennessee. I retired 2 years ago when my knees told me they were done climbing ladders. I live in a house I own outright in Cookeville, about 90 miles east of Nashville, with a yard that needs mowing and a garage full of tools I no longer use professionally. Before all of that, I was a husband and a father. Marcus was born in August of 1991. He came into the world at 4 in the morning at a hospital in Murfreesboro. His mother, Beverly, had been in labor for 16 hours. I held her hand through all of it, and when the nurse put Marcus in my arms for the first time, I understood for the first time in my life what the word everything actually meant. We were a family for the first 12 years of his life. I coached his Little League team. I taught him to change the oil in a car when he was 14, though I had to show him 3 times before it stuck. I helped him with geometry homework I barely remembered, sat through every school play and every award ceremony, drove him to birthday parties and baseball camps and orthodontist appointments. I was not a perfect father. I worked long hours, and I came home tired, and I missed things I should not have missed. But I showed up. Every single day, I showed up. Beverly and I separated in 2003 when Marcus was 12. She said she had grown unhappy, that we had grown apart, that she needed something I was not giving her. I did not understand it then. I understand it now even less. She had a lawyer before she told me she wanted a divorce, which told me everything I needed to know about how long she had been planning it. The judge awarded her primary custody. I got Marcus every other weekend and half the summer. That arrangement lasted about 2 years before Beverly remarried and moved to Brentwood, and everything quietly fell apart. The weekends became inconsistent. The summers shrank. Marcus got older and had his own schedule and his own life, and I told myself that was natural. That was just how it went. The last real conversation I had with my son was 11 years ago. He was 22, home from college for Thanksgiving, and we argued about something I cannot even fully remember now. Beverly's husband, a man named Gary who sold commercial real estate and had strong opinions about everything, said something dismissive about my trade, something about blue-collar work. I said something back. Marcus took Gary's side. I drove home to Cookeville in the dark and waited for a phone call that never came. I sent birthday cards every year. A few of them came back unopened. The rest, I assumed, went into the trash. I did not know if Marcus hated me or if he had simply moved on. Either way, the result was the same. And yet he had kept my number. He had listed me as an emergency contact. I did not stop for breakfast. I drove the 90 miles to Nashville with the radio off, thinking about what I would say when I saw him, trying to remember the last time I had seen his face. Vanderbilt Medical Center was enormous, a city within a city, all glass and concrete and the particular antiseptic smell that no amount of ventilation can fully eliminate. A woman at the information desk directed me to the 7th floor, the nephrology unit. I said the word to myself in the elevator. Nephrology. Kidneys. A doctor met me in the hallway outside Marcus's room. Dr. Alicia Wren. She introduced herself, compact and businesslike with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. She explained the situation quickly and without softening it. Marcus had been experiencing symptoms for months: fatigue, swelling, elevated blood pressure, but had not sought medical attention until last week when he collapsed at his office. He was in stage 4 kidney failure. Both kidneys were functioning at less than 15%. He needed a transplant. "We've placed him on the transplant list," Dr. Wren said, "but the average wait for a cadaveric kidney in Tennessee is 3 to 4 years. Given the rate of his decline, we don't have that kind of time. Living donors are the preferred option. We need to start testing potential donors immediately." "I want to be tested," I said. She nodded like she had expected that. "We'll draw blood today. The compatibility workup takes a few days. I should prepare you, Mr. Calloway. Even close relatives are not always a match. But we have to start somewhere." I asked if I could see him. She hesitated in a way I noticed, but did not ask about. "He's awake," she said. "He asked about you this morning." Marcus looked smaller than I remembered. He was lying in the hospital bed with an IV in his arm and a blood pressure cuff and the particular defeated posture of someone who had been sick for a long time but had been pretending otherwise. His hair was shorter than in my memory. He had his mother's eyes, always had, deep brown and long-lashed. He looked at me from across the room, the way you look at someone you are not sure how to feel about. "Dad," he said. Just that one word. But it undid 11 years in about 4 seconds. "Hey, son," I said. I pulled a chair to his bedside and we talked for almost an hour. Carefully at first, both of us aware of the distance between us, then less carefully as the hour went on. He told me about his job, project management at a logistics company in Nashville. He told me about an apartment he rented in East Nashville, a neighborhood I did not know. He told me his girlfriend's name was Priya, and that she was waiting downstairs because she had not wanted to overwhelm me. He did not apologize for 11 years of silence, and I did not ask him to. Some things you have to let sit. At some point, he said, I didn't know who else to call. "You called the right person," I said. Beverly arrived in the afternoon. She looked well, or she was performing looking well in that way she had always been good at. She was 61 now, still trim, wearing the kind of clothes that Gary's money made possible. She saw me standing in the hallway outside Marcus's room, and her expression cycled through surprise, something harder, and then something that might have been relief. "Ray," she said. "Beverly, thank you for coming. I didn't know if you would. He's my son." She nodded and looked away. I know. We did not say much more than that. There was too much old territory to navigate, and neither of us had the map. We agreed to be civil for Marcus's sake, and that was the most we could offer each other. The compatibility testing happened over 2 days. Blood draw, tissue typing, cross-match, a full medical history questionnaire. The transplant coordinator, a patient woman named Janet, walked me through each step and explained what the results would mean. I was not nervous exactly. I was certain. Marcus was my son. I had held him when he was hours old. Of course I would match. Biology follows love, I told myself. It had to. On the 3rd day, Dr. Wren asked me to come to a conference room on the 5th floor. She was not alone. There was a man I had not met before, Dr. Calvin Pruitt, head of transplant surgery, heavy-shouldered and deliberate in his speech. There was a woman named Dr. Sandra Osei, introduced to me as a genetic counselor. A genetic counselor. I did not understand why a genetic counselor would be involved in a kidney transplant. I sat down. The file folder on the table in front of Dr. Pruitt was thin, but it seemed to have weight. "Mr. Calloway," Dr. Wren began. "The compatibility tests we ran were thorough. We checked everything twice." She stopped, looked at Dr. Pruitt. He looked at me. "Mr. Calloway," he said, "there's no easy way to say this. The genetic profile we developed during the compatibility workup indicates that you and Marcus do not share a biological father-son relationship." I heard the words. I did not process them. "What do you mean?" I said. "He's my son." We understand this is very difficult to hear. Dr. Osei leaned forward slightly. The DNA markers we use in transplant compatibility are extremely precise. We ran the panel twice because the first results were unexpected. Both runs produced the same conclusion. Marcus is not your biological son. The room was quiet in a way that felt deliberate, like everyone in it was holding still. This is a mistake, I said. He was born at Rutherford Medical in Murfreesboro. I was in the room. I cut the cord. Dr. Pruitt nodded slowly. We understand why this is so hard to accept, but the science here is definitive. There is no paternal biological connection between you and Marcus. I looked at the window. The window was showing me a parking structure and a gray Tennessee sky, and I stared at it for a long time, trying to remember how to breathe. Then I said, "Does he know?" "Not yet," Dr. Wren said. "We wanted to speak with you first." I sat in that conference room for a long time after they left. Not thinking exactly, more like waiting for my mind to catch up to what my body already understood. 34 years. I had believed for 34 years that Marcus was my son. I had organized my entire life around that belief. Every early morning, every late night, every argument and every reconciliation, every card sent and every silence endured, all of it had been built on something that was not true. And yet I could still feel the weight of him in my arms on the morning he was born. I found Beverly in the family lounge on the 7th floor. She was alone, scrolling through her phone with the automatic motion of someone who is not actually reading anything. She looked up when I walked in. Whatever was in my face told her immediately. She put the phone down. "The doctors ran a genetic panel," I said. I sat down across from her. I kept my voice level. I had made a decision in the elevator coming up that I was going to be level. Marcus needed calm right now. He did not need wreckage. Beverly said nothing. "He's not my biological son, Beverly." She closed her eyes. "How long have you known?" I asked. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked at them. "A long time," she said. "Since before he was born." "Since before he was born." "Who was his father?" She was quiet for so long I thought she was not going to answer. Then she said, "A man I worked with. At the insurance company. Before we got married. His name was Dennis Hartley." I had never heard that name. Not once in 34 years of marriage and divorce and raising a child together had she ever said that name to me. "Did he know?" I asked. She shook her head. "I ended things before I realized I was pregnant. I didn't tell him. By the time I knew for sure, you and I were already serious and I thought maybe it was yours. I told myself it was yours. And when Marcus was born and you saw him?" She was quiet. "Beverly, when you saw him, did you know?" Her voice dropped to almost nothing. "I suspected." "You suspected," I said. "For 34 years you suspected that the child we were raising together was not mine and you said nothing. I was afraid, Ray. I was afraid of losing you, afraid of what it would do to Marcus." "You were afraid," I said, "and so you let me love a child and never told me the truth." I said it quietly, not cruelly, just honestly. She started crying then. I watched her cry. I did not feel what I expected to feel, which was rage. I felt something colder and more final. I felt the very last door between us close. "I need Dennis Hartley's information," I said. "Whatever you have. Marcus needs a living donor and I cannot give him one." "I'll find him," she said through her tears. "You have until tomorrow." I walked out of the lounge. I took the stairs down because I needed the movement. On the 3rd floor landing, I stopped and sat on a concrete step and pressed my palms against my eyes. I did not cry. I wanted to. But I had a son upstairs who did not yet know his entire history had just been rewritten, and I was going to need everything I had left for whatever came next. I went back to Marcus's room late that afternoon. Priya was there by then, a quiet and composed young woman who shook my hand and said she had heard a lot about me. That surprised me enough that I smiled despite everything. I sat with Marcus for an hour before I said it. I waited until Priya had gone down to the cafeteria. I waited until the nurses had finished their rounds. Then I leaned forward in the chair with my elbows on my knees and I told him the truth. He was very still while I talked. He did not interrupt. When I finished, the room was silent for a long time. Then he said, "So you can't donate?" "That's right." "I'm sorry, son." He turned his head away and looked at the ceiling. His jaw was tight. He was working through something private, and I let him work. After a while, he said, "Does Mom know who the real father is?" "Yes." "His name is Dennis Hartley. She's locating him now." Marcus nodded slowly. "Do you know him?" "Never heard his name before yesterday." Another silence. Then Marcus said, looking at the ceiling still, "This changes things for you. I understand if—" "Don't," I said. He looked at me. "Don't finish that sentence," I said. "Whatever you were about to offer me, I don't need it. I'm your father. I have been your father since the day you were born, and I will be your father until the day I die. A DNA test doesn't change that. Nothing changes that." His eyes were wet. He looked away again quickly, the way men do when they don't want to be seen. "I wasn't sure you'd still come," he said, his voice rough. "When the nurse called you, I wasn't sure you'd actually show up." I thought about the 11 years of silence, the unopened birthday cards, the argument over a Thanksgiving dinner that had cost us a decade. "I always show up," I said. "I know it hasn't looked that way, but I always show up." He did not say anything, but he reached over and put his hand on my forearm and left it there. Dennis Hartley was located in 2 days. Beverly still had an old contact number from years ago, and between that and some searching online, they found him in Chattanooga, 68 years old, recently retired from an insurance adjusting company that had bought out the old firm where he and Beverly had worked. He had been married for 30 years. He had 2 daughters in their 20s. Beverly called him. I was not in the room for that conversation. She told him what she told me, delivered in what order I did not know. When she came to find me afterward, she had the look of someone who has just put down something very heavy. "He's coming," she said. "He says he'll get tested. He wants to meet Marcus." "What did he say about not knowing?" She shook her head. "He didn't believe me at first. He thought I was lying to protect myself. When I told him about the DNA panel, he got quiet. Then he said he would be there by tomorrow morning." "Did you tell Marcus?" "I told him there was a potential donor coming. I didn't say who." "That was probably right." Some things needed to happen in the right order. Dennis Hartley arrived Thursday morning. He was tall, with gray hair cut short, and the weathered face of someone who had spent a lot of time outdoors. He walked with a slight stiffness in one hip, and he seemed uncertain when he came off the elevator, looking around like he was not sure he was in the right place. Beverly met him at the elevator. I stayed back. I watched them speak in the hallway. I watched Beverly explain, her hands moving in the careful way she had always used when she was trying to control a difficult conversation. I watched Dennis Hartley's face go through things. Disbelief, then something slower and more complicated, then a resolve that settled across his features like a man deciding to do the right thing regardless of the cost. He walked over to me. "Mr. Calloway," he said. He offered his hand. I shook it. "I don't know what to say to you," he said. "I'm sorry doesn't cover it." "No," I said. "It doesn't. But it'll do for now. My son needs a kidney. Everything else can wait." He held my gaze. "You're a better man than I'd be in your position." "I don't know about that. I've just been doing this a long time." The compatibility testing on Dennis took 3 days. I spent those 3 days in a rhythm of visiting Marcus in the morning, eating lunch in the hospital cafeteria, whether I was hungry or not, walking the long corridor between wings in the afternoon to keep my legs moving. Priya was there every day. She was quiet and steady, and I could see what Marcus saw in her. She brought him the specific brand of peppermint tea he liked, and she read to him from a novel he had been working through, sitting in the chair by the window with her feet tucked under her. That was love, I thought. The small, specific, continued kind. On the second day, Marcus asked me to tell him things. Things about when he was young, things he had forgotten or never known. I told him about the time he had gotten his hand caught in the chain of his bicycle when he was 7 and screamed like I had never heard a child scream, and I had wrapped his hand in my shirt and driven 90 miles an hour to urgent care. with his head in Beverly's lap. I told him about the summer we drove to Gatlinburg, and he got so sunburned on the first day that we spent the rest of the week in the cabin playing cards. I told him about the night before his first day of high school when he could not sleep and came and sat in the kitchen with me at 2 a.m. and we ate cereal without talking, side by side. He listened to all of it. Once or twice he laughed. Once or twice he was quiet in a way that felt like grief. "You were a good dad when I was little," he said at one point. Before the divorce. "I was," I said. "I tried to be. I always knew that. Even after. Even when Mom said the things she said, I knew what I remembered." "What did she say?" I asked. Not because I needed to know, but because he seemed to need to say it. "That you chose work over us. That you were never home enough. That you didn't fight for custody because you didn't really want it." He paused. I knew none of it was true, but she said it enough times that it started to blur. "You know how that is." "I know," I said. "I should have called you," he said. "Years ago. I should have just picked up the phone. I should have driven to Nashville and knocked on your door." "We were both idiots," he said. "Yeah," I said. "We were." He smiled. His mother's smile, I had always thought, but maybe not. The test results came back on a Friday afternoon. Dr. Pruitt called us into the same conference room, the one that had delivered the first earthquake. This time, I was not alone. Beverly sat 2 chairs away from me. Dennis Hartley sat at the end of the table looking like a man waiting for a verdict. "Mr. Hartley," Dr. Pruitt said, "the compatibility panel shows you are a strong match. Not perfect, but well within the threshold for transplantation. With proper preparation, you could donate safely." Dennis let out a long breath. "I'll do it. Whatever the timeline is, whatever it requires, I'll do it." Beverly pressed her hand over her mouth. Dr. Pruitt looked at me, briefly. The way people look at you when they are aware of the full weight of a situation. Then he turned back to Dennis and explained the procedure, the timeline, the recovery, what they would need from him in the next several weeks. I listened to all of it from a distance. Something in my chest was loosening in a way that hurt more than the tightening had. Marcus was going to live. The son I had raised, the one who had called me Dad from a hospital bed after 11 years of nothing, was going to live. I stood up and walked out before the meeting was finished. I did not make a scene. I just needed to be in the hallway where no one was looking at me. I stood by the window at the end of the hall and watched Nashville in the distance and let myself feel all of it for exactly 3 minutes. The grief and the relief and the anger and the gratitude, all of it at once, a weather system moving through. Then I went back to my son's room. Marcus had been told about Dennis 2 days earlier, a conversation that Priya was present for and that Beverly had asked me to handle. I had told him simply and directly. He had taken it quietly, which was how he took most things, turning it inward, processing it on his own terms. He had asked one question. "Does he seem like a decent person?" I had thought about it honestly. "He seems like a man trying to do the right thing 34 years too late," I said. "But yes, I think he's decent." Marcus had nodded. "Okay, tell him I'd like to meet him." That meeting had happened yesterday, in Marcus's room, with Priya present and Beverly hovering in the doorway. I had stepped out for that one. Some meetings were not mine to be part of. Priya had found me in the hallway afterward. She said Marcus held himself together the whole time Dennis was there, thanked him for coming, talked about the medical process. Then, after Dennis left, Marcus had been very quiet for a long time. "She said he asked for you," she told me. When I walked into his room, he was looking at his phone. He put it face down when I came in. "How'd it go?" I asked. He shrugged. "Strange. He seems okay. He said he was sorry a lot. That seems right?" "Yeah." He paused. He asked if we could build a relationship. Going forward. After everything. "What did you say?" I said I'd think about it. "I barely know him, Dad. He's a stranger who shares my DNA. That doesn't automatically make him family." I sat down in my chair. "That's fair." Marcus looked at me. "What?" "The Little League stuff. You coaching. The way you used to yell at the umpires from the third base line and then get embarrassed about it and wave at them." He almost smiled. "The umpire wave. I always loved the umpire wave." I laughed. I had genuinely forgotten about that. "He's the biological one," Marcus said. "But you're the one who did the umpire wave. You're the one who showed up to everything, even the boring stuff, even the stuff I didn't even want you at. You're the one who was actually there." I nodded. "I don't need another father," he said. "I have one." I did not trust my voice enough to say anything immediately. I looked out the window at the Nashville skyline for a moment. Then I said, "I'm not going anywhere this time. Whatever it takes, whatever the distance, I'm not going anywhere." He nodded. "I know." The transplant surgery happened 3 weeks later. Dennis donated his left kidney. Marcus received it. The procedure lasted just over 4 hours. Dr. Pruitt came out to the waiting area afterward and told us it had gone as well as surgeries like this could go. Beverly cried. Priya cried. Dennis Hartley sat with his hands between his knees and stared at the floor. And I could see him carrying something I did not fully understand and did not need to. I sat with my hands folded and felt a stillness that I had not felt in a very long time. Marcus came home from the hospital 17 days after the surgery. He was weak and would remain cautious for months, following a strict protocol of medications and follow-up appointments and dietary restrictions. Priya managed most of it with a precision that I respected enormously, but I drove up from Cookville twice a week to help where I could. I fixed a leaking faucet in his bathroom. I assembled a shower chair that he needed during early recovery. I made enough beef and barley soup to fill his entire freezer and left it there without making a thing of it. He ate the soup. That was the thing of it. Dennis Hartley recovered from his donation surgery in Chattanooga and sent Marcus a card that Priya told me was long and handwritten and that Marcus read twice before setting it on his nightstand. They spoke on the phone once, briefly, and agreed to speak again. That was the pace of it. Carefully, with distance enough for both of them to see clearly. Beverly and her husband Gary flew to Boca Raton for the winter the way they did every year. She called Marcus twice a week. She called me once, about a month after everything had settled, and said she was sorry in the way people say things when they have finally stopped being afraid to. I said, "I know you are, Beverly." I said, "Our son is alive. That's what matters." She did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "Thank you, Ray, for not making this harder than it had to be." I thought about that for a while after we hung up. Marcus turned 34 in August. He was still in recovery, but well enough to want a small celebration. Just family and close friends, takeout from a Thai place on Gallatin Avenue that Priya loved. I drove up the day before and spent the night on his couch. We stayed up until midnight talking about nothing important, old stories, bad movies, the Tennessee Titans making decisions that no reasonable person could defend. It was ordinary. It was exactly ordinary, and it was the best night I had spent in years. He opens his birthday card before everyone else these days. I started writing something different in them a few years back. Not just the generic printed sentiment, but an actual note. A specific memory. Something I do not want either of us to forget. This year's said, "I remember the night before your first day of kindergarten. You were so terrified you could not eat dinner. I sat on the edge of your bed and told you the classroom would be full of kids just as scared as you, and that by lunch you would already have a friend. You didn't believe me. By lunch you had 3. You have always been braver than you think. Happy birthday, son. Love, Dad." He called me that evening after everyone had gone home. I could hear in his voice that he had been crying, though he would not have said so. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said. "For the card? For all of it," he said. I was sitting on my porch in Cookville, same chair I had been in when the hospital called. The Cardinals were at the feeder again. The evening was warm for October, one of those nights that feels like summer pretending it has not left yet. "That's what fathers do," I said. He was quiet for a moment. Then, "How did you know?" "When I was born. Before you knew any of this. How did you know you loved me?" I thought about the delivery room. 4 in the morning. Beverly exhausted and the nurses moving around us efficiently, and the particular sound he made, that first outraged cry, like he had arrived somewhere unexpected. "I just did," I said. "You were mine before I even held you. I don't know how to explain it better than that," he said. I think that's a good enough explanation. I still drive up to Nashville twice a week. I have gotten to know Priya's parents, quiet and generous people from Hyderabad who bring food I have never learned the names of and insist I eat more of it. I have gotten to know Marcus's friends, the people who make up the life he built while we were not speaking. I am fitting into that life slowly, in the edges, being careful not to take up more space than I have earned. But I am there. I keep a photo in my wallet, one I have carried for 30 years. It is from Marcus's first Little League game. He is 9 years old, grinning in his oversized uniform, holding a bat he is not yet tall enough to swing properly. I am in the background, coaching, frozen mid-shout in the direction of the base path. You cannot see my face clearly, but you can see my posture, leaning in, attentive, present in the specific way that coaches and parents are present, like everything else in the world has narrowed down to this one field, this one kid. I used to look at that photo and feel the loss of everything that came after. The divorce, the silence, the 11 years of birthday cards that went nowhere, the morning I drove to Nashville and found out my son had a stranger's kidney keeping him alive. Now I look at it and see a man who was always going to drive 2 hours through the Tennessee mountains the moment his son needed him. A man who was always going to sit in a hospital room and say, "I'm not going anywhere, not this time." Genetics did not put me in that photo. Love did. The doctors will tell you that blood is what makes a match. And they are right, as far as biology goes. But the kind of match that matters, the one that survives 11 years of silence and a confession that should have been made before a wedding and a medical truth that rearranged everything I believed about my own life, that kind is not something a lab can measure. It is made of Saturday mornings and cereal at 2 a.m., and umpire waves and soup in a freezer and showing up, again and again, even when showing up costs you something. So let me ask you something. I have been thinking about this for a long time, and I do not have a clean answer. What makes someone a parent? Is it the biology, the legal document, the name on the birth certificate? Or is it something that forms slowly over years? In the accumulation of ordinary moments so small you barely notice them, until one day you look up and realize they are the whole structure of a life. I was not Marcus's biological father. I know that now with the certainty of a genetic panel run twice by people with more degrees than I could count. And I was his father every single day of his life. Both of those things are true. They live in the same body, mine, and I have made peace with the fact that I cannot choose between them. He called me last Sunday just to talk. No reason, no news. He was driving home from the grocery store and he said, "I don't know. I just felt like hearing your voice." That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.